Hello and welcome back to another Doctor Who Big Finish review. In today's Doctor Who Big Finish review I'll be looking at Nightmare Country by Stephen Gallagher, who obviously wrote The Warrior's Gate and Terminus. So this is one of his stories what never got made, because 2019 we saw the resurgence in the Lost Stories range. Obviously it ended back in 2014 with the Mega, one of my favourite Big Finish stories of all time. It's just a brilliant 6-part Pertwee epic. But then sort of midway through 2019 we had the announcement that Nightmare Country and The Ultimate Evil were being adapted for audio, which is very exciting, and it seems like the Lost Stories are coming back to a degree. In a recent Tom Baker and Nicholas Briggs interview, Tom Baker was holding a script called Doctor Who Lost Stories Return of the Cybermen, which is really exciting. So looks like we've got a 4th Doctor and Cyberman story in the works, which is very exciting. But we're here to look at the 5th Doctor story based in season 21, and I believe that this is the first time that this TARDIS crew has had a Big Finish adventure, which kind of seems strange to say, but I believe that this is the first story to feature just Tegan and Turlough, because obviously we had Chameleon in the first line of Monthly Range in 2019, then we had sort of older Nyssa join the sort of Tegan and Turlough in that range of 5th Doctor adventure. So I believe but this is the first just Tegan and Turlough and 5th Doctor story. So without further ado, let's look at the presentation for this release, and then we're going to my thoughts on this story. So taking a look at the presentation for this release, we have the Doctor Who logo there. We have this really nice sort of split cover, which I really do like, because it really does represent the story, because it's set in 2 zones. Obviously the sort of graveyard planet with the Vodani and all the graves there, which is rather creepy and eerie. Tegan, 5th Doctor, Turlough, the planet, and the sort of TARDIS walls there, and this nice sort of circuitry background there, which is all very nice, with this nice sort of greeny blue motif, which is brilliant. Lost Stories Nightmare Country by Stephen Gallagher. The side of the release and the back of the release. So if you want to know more about the story, then do feel free to pause. So taking a look at the leaflet, we have the cast and production credits, which is all very nice. We have some lovely cast images there, which is lovely to see the people involved in this release. And then we have the reversible cover with the Peter Davison logo. And the disc art is exactly the same for both discs. So out of the 2 recent Lost Stories, this one intrigued me more than The Ultimate Evil, since The Ultimate Evil is pretty well documented with the novelisation and it being covered in the DVD and Blu-ray range. So Nightmare Country seemed incredibly exciting, since I knew nothing about it. I had no background knowledge on the story. So why did Nightmare Country never come to our screens back in the 1980s? Well, Stephen Gallagher submitted the story in late 1982, but was turned down by Eric Saywood due to how costly it would be to make. And I'll be honest, there are certain areas where I can see, yeah, this story wouldn't really work on TV. But the actual concept was ahead of its time, with the idea of a reality simulator, which in modern day terms is essentially VR. Proving that science fiction is becoming science fact. So what do I think of Nightmare Country? Well, I have to say it is a good, solid slice of science fiction, with some really interesting ideas and themes explored throughout the story, with the story really having that strong 80s feel, with it feeling like an off-screen recording, and the music, well, it's 80s synthy goodness. When listening to this, I got a strong Frontios vibe, which is really good to me because I absolutely love Frontios. Part 1 wastes no time in getting started, as we have this rather creepy whispering sound with it revealing a rather confused Doctor, not knowing who he is and where he is. So straight away you're wondering what on earth is going on here, with him being on this graveyard planet and him not knowing where he is, with him bursting into action to save someone from the Vogani, which I'm just going to say straight from the bat are brilliant. I love them, they're a great sort of creation, where we learn that there are 2 factions on this planet, the humans and the Vodani. Now, the world building for this story is excellent, with it being set on this sort of barren planet full of crashed spaceships, full of graves and different burial zones. So this gives this story a very bleak feeling to it. While the Doctor goes off with the humans, we have Tegan and Turlough in the TARDIS with these reality engineers, which are a really cool idea behind them, with them repairing the TARDIS, who are creating this reality engine, where they're creating their own planet using this imaginary world and making it become a reality. So we have this really interesting high sci-fi ideas, and I really do like the aspect of the story as we get to explore more of the TARDIS, and the story does play with how infinite the TARDIS is, with us returning to the old console room. Meanwhile, with the Doctor, we expand on the humans, with them trying to get off the world in a wooden spaceship, and this really makes them sell the Vodani as a threat, with them taking crew members and us getting their backstory and learning about them being this hive mind creatures and how do they know the Doctor? The Vodani seem to know the Doctor, and we have this rather traditional Doctor Who cliffhanger. Part 2, so things are really ramping up with the reality engine going wrong, and the chief engineer is hiding something, so things aren't looking good. And with the Doctor slowly starting to piece this world together, with him questioning this world he's on, with him going on a rescue mission in the catacombs. So we continue world building, but we have Tegan and Turlough on their own mission to try and save the Doctor, where the Vodani are building this machine for their dream god. So we're introduced to even more sci-fi concepts in the form of the engram, with this leading to a very dramatic cliffhanger. Part 3, this is where Tegan and Turlough take centre stage, with Tegan on the planet trying to get the Doctor out of the reality engine, as the Doctor is the only one who can stop this process. So they must find the door back to reality, with Tegan and the Doctor trying to persuade the crew to go through the door. I think that this part really utilises Turlough very well, with him trying to find a solution to save the Doctor and Tegan. And also in part 3, the Vodani really do shine, because we get to see that they are a true threat to this crew. That these are the scavenger creatures, and this episode is when things get really explosive and nightmares become reality. Part 4, now this episode is all based in the TARDIS, which I really like having stories because it reminds you that the TARDIS is so much more than just a control room, so we learn more on why the world failed, why the reality engine's failing. And one thing what I think is really strong about the whole story is that there is a great sense of urgency throughout the whole story. And this is no exception. With the Vodani loose on the TARDIS, we learn more about their machine they've been building, and we learn more about their dream god and why they've been taking the crew members from back in part 1. And if they succeed, the demons will forever be on the loose, and we learn more about Wallace, this sort of engineer character, and how he ties into things with the Vodani. And we have a rather beautiful scene between the Doctor and Tegan, but the ending does feel rather abrupt. But I do get what Stephen Gallagher was trying to go for, because I feel like the ending, when the story finishes, you're like, wow, is that really the end of the story? Because it just suddenly ends and you're like, what's going on here? But I get what Stephen Gallagher's trying to do, because it's meant to be this sudden shock of things have all snapped back into place. So yeah, the ending is a little bit abrupt, but I get what Stephen Gallagher was trying to go for. Moving on to characters now, the Doctor, played by Peter Davison, another brilliant performance, with us seeing, despite him being in this dazed, confused state, he still has the instincts to dive in and help. I feel because you have made the Doctor very powerless in this story, with him not knowing who he is, but you really get to see the core characteristics of the Doctor. There's still the youthful gent there. We see his medical skills. We see him take a stance of being authoritative with the other characters, which the Fifth Doctor isn't normally, a person to be authoritative. He's a person who will just tend to wait back and let everyone talk and then he'll butt in with his plan. It's nice to see that Stephen Gallagher's done something a little bit different with the Fifth Doctor, which makes it quite refreshing to see that the Fifth Doctor can have this sort of authoritative stance. Tegan, played by Janet Fielding, I feel like Janet Fielding does an excellent job, and I feel like this story puts the character out of her comfort zone. There are odd moments within this story where you feel like this does seem a bit out of character for Tegan, but I think it works rather well, because it feels like we're actually giving Tegan a bit more character progression, because we're putting Tegan out of her comfort zone. We're trying to put Tegan in different scenarios, and it's quite interesting to see how Tegan responds to that. So it's a nice little bit of character progression for Tegan within this story. But we still have the traditional Tegan traits, that feisty attitude with the sharp tongue and the sarky comments. But despite all this, we see how protective she is of the Doctor. In part 3, Tegan really does shine. Turlough, played by Mark Strickson, does a very good job with him trying to understand the engineers, with him trying to calm Tegan down and explain the situation to her. So he's rather logical, and I think the whole thing, he really does take charge in episode 3. But of course, that doesn't last long, because obviously Turlough's a little bit of a coward, and obviously we do see his cowardly nature return in part 4 with a nice little reveal from something that happened in part 3. So yeah, Mark Strickson does a brilliant job in bringing Turlough to life within this story, and this is a really good story for Turlough, because we get to see him do a little bit more than what he was given on TV. Wallace, played by Edward Deedy, the engineer apprentice, a rather calm character and very much a person who explains all the sci-fi concepts to you throughout the story. But part 4, we really learn more about him as a character, with us getting his backstory, and a character you really do pity. And he also plays the Vodani, Edward Deedy I should say, and he does a brilliant job bringing these menacingly fierce creatures to life. And one thing what I really like about this story is, because it's a small cast, you get people playing multiple roles, but it works within the grand scheme of the story, because they're basically playing polar opposites of the characters what they play. So obviously Wallace is a very calm character, but then you've got Edward Dede playing, you know, the Vodani, the monster of this episode. So what are my concluding thoughts on Nightmare Country? It is an authentic slice of 80s Doctor Who with high sci-fi concepts, what wouldn't seem out of place for the time. The story has a great scale to it, with excellent world building from this barren graveyard planet to exploring and expanding the TARDIS. The Vodani are deliciously menacing monsters. The music is 80s Who at its finest, making this a really strong bit of Doctor Who. Excellent performances from the cast, and the story definitely benefits being told on the audio medium. And one thing I will notice about this story is the story is incredibly short. It's a really quick listen. You know, the shortest episode is 21 minutes, and then the longest episode's like 26 minutes, so it's about 24-25 minutes the other episode. So it's a really quick listen, and I think that's really nice because it really does keep the great pacing. It helps that sense of urgency throughout the story. It is a really good story. Stephen Gallagher did an excellent job within this, and I'm glad that it's finally out there for us to experience, and I love it. I think that it is a great Fifth Doctor story, and I think Stephen Gallagher referenced one of his own books in episode 4. I think that he referenced one of his own books, so I guess that was his own little treat to himself of referencing one of his own books, what Stephen Gallagher wrote. So that's brilliant. So I'm going to give this story 8 celeries out of 10. I think that it is a good, solid Fifth Doctor story, and it's definitely worth considering getting. It's a really nice story. The monsters are brilliant, really great sci-fi concepts. So if you're really into sort of interesting science fiction concepts, then this is a really good one. This is a really good story, and I love it. Great world building, great characters, and great monsters. What more do you want from a Doctor Who story? It's brilliant. So I'm going to give this story 8 celeries out of 10. So thank you very much for watching this Big Finish review. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you on my next Big Finish review. It could be many things. It could be either, you know, Daughter of the Gods, the Dark Universe, the Fourth Doctor Adventures Series 9 Volume 1. So it could be all manner of things. I'm not quite sure what I'll be reviewing next. So thank you very much for watching this review. I hope you have enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time. So thank you very much, and goodbye.